All right, Russ Waterman joining us on a Zoom conference. This is my first and his 197th, so he's the
It's pretty close.
Well, Russ, first of all, how are you? It's a weird time for all of us. How you hanging in there?
I think it's like everybody else. It's a struggle at times. I mean, um, we're creatures of habit, but we're also creatures of interaction. And to not be around teachers, coaches, administrators, kids, parents, families, events, it's a struggle. I mean, I know every morning I get up, I come to the east wing of the office called the dining room, and my dog looks at me and goes, "Really? Again? You're home again?" But no, we're making through. I mean, obviously, it's for the right reason to do the right things that the governor and our president are asking us to do to flatten the curve. And it's tough, but it seems to be working. So
I know that there was, with the initial, temporary closure of schools, you guys took the gear back and all of the stuff that had been assigned out to spring sports. I know that there was talk of cleaning things up and cleaning lockers and stuff like that. Did that get done? What's been happening? And then of course now the closure for the rest of the year.
yeah, initially we were working from pretty good faith that maybe this wouldn't be as long as we were. And some people will say, "Oh, it was a pipe dream," but you have to operate that way. This is opportunity and hope. And so our planning at that point was to take back all the gear, get it sanitized, get the gear in, get it cleaned. Our head custodian, or our events custodian, I should say, Nick Turner, did a great job in getting all of our stuff cleaned and ready to go. And I know that first week that we were out from March 17th, our custodial staff in our building, Brian Frank is the head custodian, and all those custodians worked long time long hours, long days to get everything cleaned. In fact, now when we go back in, we're deemed still as an essential entity. And so if I go into work in the office, we're asked to clean what we touched and where we're at, because they did a deep clean on our building and our district. And I'm sure it's the same across the board, but they're heroes. I mean, they're in there working their butts off, and we were sitting here, and so kudos to them.
I feel so badly for the seniors, obviously, that had their entire spring season wiped away, some of which were hoping, I'm sure, to use that as a possible launch pad to the next level of maybe getting a scout to come out and take a look at them and get them some college opportunities. What's Eastmont doing? I've heard some rumblings about what schools are trying to do for those seniors that missed out. What are you guys trying to do to recognize those seniors?
I think when you look at the whole thing, it's very unfortunate. Again, I go back to, it was something we had to do. When we look at what Governor Inslee had to do, what the WI director Mick Hoffman had to do, it was the last decision. I mean, it really was probably the last thing on Mick Hoffman's checkbox in talking with him to cancel the season. And the unfortunate factor is those seniors don't get that final culminating event, that final season. You think back, and I look back to my own, who's a senior this year, and I look back to those years as an 8, 9, 10-year-old when I was coaching him, and all the memories that we have there, and those athletes talking about when we get to be a Wildcat, when we get to be a Panther, when we get to be a Bulldog, a Kodiak, whatever school you want to enter in there. It's huge to them. I mean, it's a part of their life. It's a fabric of what they do, as well as being a student at each high school. It's a fabric of what they do, and that kind of gets pulled away. And so my heart breaks for them. It really does. I get emotional when we talk about that, and so we're trying our best to honor them. And a couple of things that we've worked on last week and this week we wanted to do it right. We wanted to go step by step. We didn't want to just do something that was, maybe not well thought out or half baked and not good. But, we're going to join in this Friday on April 17th as the national, or not the national, but the state Be the Light program. That's where we turn on the stadium lights at 8:20, which is 2020 military time, and we'll leave them on for 20 minutes. And we're going to place the senior banners that we do every year for our senior athletes. We're going to put them on the fence line, and we're just going to have a little bit of an honor there, that they're not there competing. Soccer's not competing, track's not competing in that stadium. We don't have baseball on Dan White. We don't have softball at the fourplex. We don't have tennis on the tennis courts. In golf, we just don't have it. So this is our small way for 20 minutes to recognize them. And in addition to that, we're going to do a senior spotlight. So we'll be, putting a social media blitz out with each of our seniors, kind of a survey, kind of questionnaire, of what they answered about their experience at Eastmont, plus little coaches' comments about them. Because the one thing they don't get also is that senior night.
Right.
You know, that event right at the end. You've been at many of them, Eric, when you've broadcasted it. It's an emotional event for those families. There's a lot of dedication, sacrifice, and time that parents and family have given into their kids to be able to participate in athletics. And so it's just our little way of trying to say some sense of normalcy, some sense of honor to them. And one thing that you know is important, I think, about the Be the Light. We're going to do that over the course of 6 weeks. We're going to do one team, and we'll do that media blitz for one team. But I also want to recognize those people that are on the front line, our doctors, our nurses, you know, our grocery clerks, all these people that are still working to make our country and make our communities go. They need to be kind of an attaboy too. So we've included them kind of in this time too, that they're not forgotten in what they're doing.
Well, and one thing too, you know, as we've done the broadcasts of multiple sport athletes and things like that, now I'm seeing these kids that should be, you know, wearing some form of uniform in the spring. They're out working on the front lines in a lot of the local locations here. Be it a grocery store or fast food restaurant that's still open to be able to serve folks. And I'm seeing that familiar face. And, you know, everyone I've bumped into, I've said, man, I'm sorry you're losing out on your season.
Yeah, that's, you know, I think our seniors get it. I mean, over the initial, and I hate to use the word grieving process because it's really not a tragedy. There's so many people that have lost family members to the COVID-19. So I don't want to use that term, but it's different for them. They've lost something important to them. And so I think they've moved beyond that a little bit, and they are coming back into what can I do to get to normalcy? What can I do to contribute? A lot of our athletes, a lot of our students are out there. Again, like you said, they're in the workforce. They're doing things. So kudos to them for doing that.
I know there's still a lot of decisions to be made about graduation, and that's not necessarily your purview, so I won't ask you about that. One thing I did wonder about was with the shutdown and with the lack of use of your facilities. I know that the football stadium, the soccer stadium, that turf has certainly been through the wars over the last several years and really was getting in great shape. I imagine that because of the lack of use, that all your facilities have gotten some probably attention that maybe they needed. But you tell me. I know Nick's been a busy guy, but and the groundskeepers and things like that. I mean, what's been happening with those facilities?
You know, some of the stuff that we're really looking at, I do wish that this is kind of atypical right now. Even in mid-April, we're getting a little bit of it's not very warm, put it that way, when we go outside still, right? So I don't think we've hit the peak growing season, but I had a conversation with Terry Gear, who's our head groundsman, and Sean Tanner, who's our maintenance director, about, you know, what can we do at this point? You know, granted, not taking our maintenance staff and our custodial staff away from their essential duties to make sure our schools are upkept and clean and sanitized, but there is going to be some work done on Dan White Field, on the infield. There is going to be work done on the stadium, Wildcat Stadium, on just the grass and rehab that. It probably is a good thing that all of our turf facilities are going to get a break for a growing season. Maybe we can get a little bit of action on leveling out some areas. So those are all things that are in plan. But again, we got to work with what, you know, there's some building needs. I mean, when you look at the pecking order of the district's needs from a structural infrastructure standpoint, I'm sure the buildings are at the same as any of our athletic fields. There's probably some times here with kids not in the building, we can get a lot of stuff of that done. So we're working with maintenance to try and knock off a few of those things on our list, and hopefully with the restart in August, or, you know, even our off season, we'll have everything ready to go.
Well, speaking of that, this is normally the time of year when, or, you know, a few weeks from now, that some of the fall sports get a chance to do a little spring activity with spring football, things like that. As you plan ahead with so many hanging question marks over our head, what are we looking for the fall, Russ? I mean, are you right now preparing, hey, fall, we're going to have fall just as usual. We're going to be able to get up and get going with our fall sports in mid-August, or what's the game plan?
Well, again, I think, you know, we have to look optimistically and positively at this, that we've done the right things as a society, that we've done the right things in North Central Washington and Washington State, and that we're going to reach some sense of normalcy coming forward. So we're planning for that. We're planning. Plan A is we're going to start again. As soon as that date that was set for the state track meet, that ends the out-of-season stipulations for the WIAA. We're able to do some camps. We're able to do some contact with our kids if the May 4th order is rescinded by Governor Inslee, and we're able to do some more things and not stay under, stay home and stay safe, then we're going to go through business as normal with a few modifications. We know that there's been a huge financial impact to people and families. That's without, without overstating that. I mean, families are not working. So we're not going to do a couple of things that we were going to do at the high school in regards to athletics. We're not going to travel to some team camps. We're not going to fundraise for those camps. We're going to try and do things in-house here in the off season. We were offering some youth camps in boys and girls basketball. Coach Juarez and Coach Stone were offering those. Volleyball, we were going to do a volleyball youth camp with Coach Davis. I know Coach Hurtado was going to do a soccer camp. We're still going to hold those camps, but we're not going to charge. We were doing a nominal fee to cover t-shirts and everything else. What we're going to do is we're just going to run the camps. We know we got to help some of these families out financially, but also offer them some opportunities for their young kids to get out of the house. But we're going to move forward that way, that we're going to start in August with football. There's a lot of questions that we just sat on a Big Nine Zoom meeting this morning, and we had a conversation about, approaching Mick Hoffman and the WIA, what is going to happen if the quarantine goes a little bit longer? Do we lose some of that off-season time? Are we looking at modifying August as a no-contact month? What are we doing if it extends? But we're planning for it to be normal. We just are. And then we'll have to adjust if we need to.
Well, and it's also in the spring that you, as athletic directors, are formulating your fall sports seasons and schedules, right?
Well, we were kind of ahead of the game there, and I think most people at the 4A level are, just with RPI and trying to schedule equitable games. We've had the fall schedule set since probably mid-November. So football and volleyball, girls swim, cross country, volleyball, those are set. They're, non-leagues are set, tournaments are set, and we're ready to go. And even to the most part, most of winter is set right now, with a lot of things hanging in the balance with basketball, with a WIA amendment to move from a 20 to 24 game season. So we're still finagling some things there, but I think that's put in place. That's not going to affect us, at least in the Big Nine. That schedule for most, at least for Eastmont, I know that we're set for all of our maximum amount of games that we can do.
Well, and that also included travel. I know that some agreements with schools ended last year, and that you were looking at, as far as football is concerned, new commitments to be able to do a home series over a couple of years with different opponents. Those travel schedules, I mean, all things being equal, still planning on doing that, I assume?
Yes, we are. I mean, it's a 2-year cycle, so we try to do the home away with everybody. I think it's balanced at this point. I know in the fall it's balanced. We're going to doing a review of our winter sports to make sure we balance the home and away in basketball a little bit better this year. So I think the transportation is all kind of in the same area that it's been in the past. I think our furthest game that we're going to go is we're going to go into the Panhandle, and I want to say that's against Post Falls. So we're just across the border for that. But everything else is Spokane, Tri-Cities, or locally here for our varsity contests.
Budgetarily speaking, with the lack of sports that you've had this spring and a ton of athletes that you would normally have had to shuttle all over the eastern part of the state for activities, can you bankroll that for next year? I don't know how the budgeting works, or is that basically the end? What is it? June, July is your end of your fiscal year. You start a new one and you start from scratch, or how does that work?
Well, we've been just briefly speaking about this. When you look at the global perspective of finance, this has been something new for us, and kudos to our building principals and teachers in the district that have gone from a brick and mortar system in 1 to 2 weeks to a remote learning system. And we all know it's not perfect. We know that, but the passing out of Chromebooks to those that needed, I think it was 450 Chromebooks were passed out at Eastmont High School alone. So people can access things. I know that Localtel and Spectrum and local internet providers are giving free internet for homes for our community so kids can continue to learn. That comes at a price tag. That comes at a cost. And so I would be very hesitant to say that anything that we don't spend in athletics is going to be bankrolled and moved into athletics, because there might be a greater need academically for that. So that conversation really hasn't happened at the district level. I know that, just from the athletic standpoint, some of the projects we have to do could get done. Maybe some wish list could be checked off, but not at the expense of having our kids being in school or having a good, if things happen and we have to be, Superintendent Reichdahl mentioned it in his last press conference that, maybe we're in October before we get back to coming back to school. Well, that's a huge impact. That's a huge expense. So we're saving money, but I don't know where that money's going yet.
Russ, the hardest thing for educators and yourself, and then also for parents, and you being a parent of a senior this year, what's the message? I mean, what possibly can you tell these kids that, have had their whole world turned upside down, and the fact that they've had the better part of half of their senior years wiped away? Graduation is up in the air, what's going to happen. But I mean, what can you tell these kids?
One thing we've tried to focus on with our spring head coaches and even some of our fall head coaches is, they talk to the kids. They're texting the kids. They're direct messaging the kids. They're in contact with them, just like they would be in the hallways at school. They check in on them so many times. That relationship piece is so huge. And we're just trying to tell them it's an opportunity. It's just not the opportunity that you wanted. There's still time. I mean, we talk about our coaches creating activities and treat our seniors now as graduate assistant coaches. How can they impact the future? How can they impact the underclassmen? You'll see that on our senior spotlight. That's the last question that's on there. What advice will you give to kids that are working toward their final years? I know that just for an example, I'm not singling out this coach or this program and dismissing anything else. Coach Johnson for our softball program had his seniors write a legacy paper. What is it that it meant to you to be a Wildcat in Wildcat softball? And what information would you give to your underclassmen? I know that he's also following with that letter with the underclassmen writing a letter to the seniors. So that's kind of where the focus becomes. It becomes out of the X's and O's and performance to that holistic model and that model about their heart and that meaning and their self-actualization. That's where we're focusing our efforts right now. To tell you the truth and to be blunt, to try and get a kid to exercise at home, train at home, or do something athletic, it sucks. It doesn't work very well. But the rest of that with culture, your leadership, and the things that you're doing, that can be done during this time. And I think a lot of our coaches across the board are working on that.
Well, speaking of that, as far as the coaches with direct contact, I know with the distant learning that's going on with the Chromebooks and doing things online and things like that, the teachers have access, but do the coaches have that similar kind of an access, especially when we talk about the fall season moving ahead? I mean, do they got to wait till mid-June to have access to their athletes, or how does that work?
No, they have access. We use Remind as our communication tool for all of our teams and that's an online platform. So they're able to message them. We communicate through our athletic student information system, Family ID. That's how I communicated all those senior athletes to fill out the questionnaire, sending them the documents through Google and Google Docs. It's tough, Eric. You and I are about similar in age, and I thought I was pretty good with technology, but there's some amazing things going on, and I'm becoming a tech dino these days. But our coaches are tech savvy, and they're doing a lot of good stuff. So there's still a lot of outreach there. The sports specific contact can't happen until that date of the state track meet ends. But the rest of the stuff about check-ins and wellness and everything else is just like if a coach was in the hallways. And our coaches are excellent at doing that.
Well, certainly crazy times, Russ. We're all in it together. And I guess that's the thing to certainly keep in mind. And I appreciate you taking the time from, what'd you say, your East office? Is that where you are?
The East office, okay, which is next to the cafeteria and the lounge.
Yeah, my wife keeps asking me why I get up in the morning and shower and shave and, get fully dressed when I'm only going 2 doors down the hallway. And I said, hey, it's about a routine. You got to keep some sort of routine going.
Yeah, you can only binge watch so much stuff on Netflix before you go, you know what? I really need to work.
Exactly. And then it's also getting those that are around you that aren't working there, that are at home as well, to realize that, hey, I'm actually working here.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to our staff, at least at the high school. I can't speak to the other buildings, but our teachers are working overtime right now, trying to relearn and get that learning out remotely. Again, it's not a perfect system, but Well, you talk about teachers earning their pay right now. This isn't showing up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get your cup of coffee, get your lesson plans going, and take roll and teach for 45 minutes. Our teachers had to really restructure what they're doing, and so many kudos to them for what they're doing. We sit on the staff meetings, and they're doing great things. I can't only believe that other schools are doing the same stuff, so they need to have a good shout out.
Absolutely. And then you take, 30 students that you've got online that have the world happening behind them with younger siblings and dogs, everything else. And that's got to be an interesting learning environment, that's for sure.
Well, I'm pretty sure if you Googled it on YouTube, you'd probably see some home classrooms that are real interesting right now. So,
well, Russ, stay healthy, stay home. We'll talk to you soon. And eventually we'll get past all this and be able to just talk about sports. How about that?
It's one of those things. We're going to be talking about this for history for a long period of time. I mean, people in 1919 and they're talking about that flu epidemic and everything else. This is just our time. But, we're resilient beings, and our country is a resilient country, and our communities are resilient communities. We're going to get through this, and we're going to be fine.
Thanks for taking the time, Russ.
No worries, Eric. Good luck. Stay safe out there.